What's up, and welcome to Clarity for Parents of Athletes, bringing you stories from professional athletes about their parents and how they were raised. My name is Gabe Nosair from aclearmind.com. All right, and welcome to episode number 22. Now, before I talk about the guest for this episode, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. We've been picking up some steam, and people are listening from all over the country, all the way from Utah to Tampa to Macon, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and of course, where I live in Albuquerque. But not just that, but our audience is growing to England, Australia, Switzerland, Brazil. I just really appreciate you all listening and keep encouraging you to tell others about the podcast so that they can make their best even better when it comes to parenting their athletes. Please feel free to also rate, subscribe to, and review the podcast. And I also wanted to send out a limited time offer to you or anyone that you know that if you write a favorable review on Apple Podcast and then contact me telling me that you did it, which I'll also read it on the air, that I will give you a completely complimentary and no strings attached private coaching session, which I do over the phone. All you need to do is just review the podcast on Apple Podcasts and then email me at gabe@aclearmind.com. That's aclearmind.com. And let me know who you are, and we'll get you scheduled for a very powerful coaching call. So just a little gift for you, but again, it's a limited time offer. So go ahead and do it soon. I appreciate it. Now remember, I'm always available to work with you privately or in small groups, and I do workshops as well for teams and parents. Last week, I had a great workshop with some parents from New Mexico Soccer Academy. We really had a lot of fun and great discussion, and I really felt a new level of consciousness happening by the end of it. And I hope they felt that as well. So thanks to those parents and best wishes to them. Head to my website at clearmind.com to find out more about what I do. Now, our amazing guest for this episode is Aiyana Whitney, who just happens to be the niece of one of my best friends. And just so you know who she's referring to during the interview, she mentions her uncle, whose name is Ubusuku, as well as the names of her other two uncles, Mokhtar and Abdullah. So just so you know who she's talking about during the interview. Now, they definitely influenced her during her journey as an athlete, which went from the basketball court in the beginning to the volleyball court, and really to the highest level of volleyball, I might add. Aiyana played her college volleyball at Penn State, a traditional powerhouse in women's volleyball, and then she went on to play professionally overseas and was on the US National Team as well before recently retiring. Now, as always, we explore what her childhood and her youth athletic journey were like and how her parents and family influenced her, and also some stories of some people she played with and how their family members hindered their love for volleyball. A little bit of an unfortunate story, but really, really powerful as well. Please stick around after Aiyana and I finish up to hear my takeaways from the interview, where I tie together what impacted me the most in hopes that it takes you deeper, all for the benefit of your child and yourself, of course. All right, enjoy. All right, Aiyana, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. How's everything going for you?
Absolutely, no problem. I'm doing pretty well. I'm just kind of hanging out and in the process of transitioning between playing and the real world.
Nice. Cool. Well, welcome to the real world for the rest of us who are professional athletes. Thank you. So I want to definitely get into your professional life as an athlete, but I want to backtrack way before that so our audience can know a little bit more who you are both personally and also what it was like for you as a young athlete. So let's start with the personal side, if you're okay with that, and find out a little bit about your family life and all that stuff, where you grew up, and I'll let you take it away.
Alrighty. Personal life. Let's see. I am one of three children, and my mom, Vanessa, and my dad, Alvin, both met in New York, and we grew up a little bit in the city up until I was probably 4. And then I moved to New Jersey, where I spent the rest of my childhood, which was pretty awesome. I loved growing up in Jersey. Let's see, I have an older sister, Anissa. She's 4 years older than I. And then my little brother, who's only 14 months younger than me. So I'm the middle child. Let's see, my mom is one of 5 children. I have 3 uncles and an aunt. And my dad is an only child, as his younger brother actually passed away at a young age. So I have no aunts or uncles on my dad's side, or first cousins, which is pretty interesting. And let's see, I grew up in Jersey, primarily playing basketball, and I was a cheerleader, strangely enough. Yeah, and I was kind of one of those little sisters who just had to do everything that my older sister was doing. So that's kind of how I transitioned into playing volleyball, because Anissa was picked out of basketball practice by her high school volleyball coach. And as soon as she started playing and really liking it, I was like, me too. So I dropped basketball at a young age and started pursuing volleyball full time. So that was how I got into that. Khalil pretty much played basketball his whole life. He actually, strangely enough, had a natural touch when it came to volleyball. Like, I would just play with him in the backyard and stuff, and he was actually really good, but he never pursued it. I think basketball spoke more to his personality. So yeah. Let's see. What else can I say about myself?
Well, I could ask some questions if that'll help you out.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it, yeah.
You know, when I met you, I don't know if you remember, but your uncle is one of my best friends, and I met you briefly at his wedding, and I could not believe.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I could not believe how tall you and your sister are.
Yeah.
Your brother was still younger, so he's still adolescent. I imagine he's a giant as well.
Yeah, he's taller than me now.
Yeah, so
it's crazy.
And I think your dad was probably very tall as well, and he played some sports when he was younger as well, right? So what about that?
Mm-hmm. He played basketball. He played football as a child, and then he played basketball full time in high school, and then went on to play in college at Ithaca. Yeah, and he actually had the opportunity to play pro, but then I guess he chose to go a different route. But he does tell me to this day, he's like, after seeing you play and being able to see the pro life up close, he's like, I wish I would have done it. It's such a great opportunity. But yeah, basketball player.
So why didn't he take that opportunity, did he say?
I think he just wanted to pursue his career. I know he, from a young age, wanted to get into television, and he actually had a lot of opportunity, in New York when it came to the production side of television. So I think he just made the decision to jump right into that, as opposed to putting it on hold to pursue basketball overseas.
Mm-hmm. So I know it for me as a parent that when my kids were interested in my sport, which was soccer, that I loved it. I was like, oh my God, they're interested in my passion. Now, you played basketball when you were younger. What was your relationship with your dad like while you're playing basketball?
Oh, it's crazy. I tell my friends about this all the time, because they have actually asked me the same question. It's wild because now his job is so close to basketball, and he's had to learn volleyball through me. And growing up, he did not understand why I didn't want to play basketball. It was quite intense, I think, up until actually I got into college, because we spent a lot of summers traveling from New Jersey, my dad lives in Atlanta, so we'd travel from Jersey to Atlanta, and we'd spend the summer with my dad. And so once I got seriously involved in volleyball, a lot of my summers, or all my summers really, were dedicated to that, going to camps and doing various things to get better. And he couldn't wrap his head around, me not being able to come down to visit, and why I was dedicating so much time to this sport. He didn't even know what volleyball was. And he was like, if you just play basketball, you could come down here for the summer and like we could work on your game. And it was just a tough thing that he didn't understand until he actually traveled and saw me play. And then I think that's when it clicked, because he didn't get to see me play until my senior year of high school. And then he would come up for college games once he was, more settled on the idea, I think, or more sold.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. So if we could backtrack a little bit, those interactions that you would have, I imagine there was some feelings, a lot of feelings of maybe pressure, anxiety, frustration. What was that like for you, and how did you best deal with it?
No, definitely. I think at first I was, nervous about disappointing him and nervous about, actually trying the sport as a whole, because no one in my family has ever played before. So it was just uncharted territory, I guess. And I think what drove me to keep playing was just that it came so naturally to me, and I really loved it. I loved it from, a very young age, and from the first time I had started playing. So I think that just kept me going. It was more so of like, I'm really good at this, and if you're not with it, then that's on you, but I'm going to pursue this because I really, really love it. And I'm actually really good. So I think for me, that's what, kept me going. But it was disappointing, definitely, for him to not understand why I was playing and not to support it. It did, take a toll. It made me sad. And I know, like, my mom was completely all in, like, she was footing the bill for all the camps and for me to play and driving me around, like crazy through snowstorms to get to work with different coaches and to be on different teams. And so it was just like a lot of pressure on her, and to see that as well was, it was a lot for me, because I'm like, it would be awesome if I had both of my parents kind of involved in helping me along in the process. And so I think for a long time it did make me pretty upset, and I was pretty angry with him. You know what I mean? Just because of the lack of support, and it put a strain on like our relationship as a whole. And like I said, that was kind of how it was until I got to college, really, where I kind of, I kind of put it on the table. I was like, you need to come up here, come to my school, see what this is about, come see me play. And like, let's work on this. You know what I mean? It was kind of me kind of taking charge and making a decision that that's what I wanted for my father and I.
Mm-hmm. So when players feel this pressure from their parents or this lack of support, sometimes it can restrict them from really flourishing in the sport that they're participating in. But it sounds like that didn't happen to you, because you flourished.
Right.
So why do you think you were able to flourish despite feeling this lack of support?
100%, I'd have to say that'd be my mom. Having her in my corner every day and, pushing me and supporting me and, just kind of being that constant, it was huge for me. She did everything that she could to help me be the best that I could be, and seeing how hard she worked for me made me work even harder. And, for a while, I think initially, like I said, it was tough not having my dad be that support system. But then for a while that kind of was silenced through, me just kind of putting my head down, working hard. And, I eventually saw how good I could be. And then that, pushed me towards the goals that I set for myself. And I wanted to just kind of go that extra mile, because my mom had to do so much work, for me to be great. Mm-hmm. And so if I didn't have her, in all honesty, I am sure I would not have gone on to be, half the athlete that I was able to be.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. It's amazing what unconditional love from anybody, especially a parent, can do for a child. And that seems like that's what you had from your mom.
Absolutely.
Just complete support.
And just seeing, for sure, and seeing kind of like the opposite of that. I mean, obviously I've been on a lot of teams, and I think that came to I was able to see the opposite of that through my college teammates in some aspect. And I think that, reinforced kind of her, like how important her presence was because I did have teammates, who their parents didn't care, never came to games. They kind of had to hitch a ride with a teammate or whatever. Their parents would just kind of sign the check and kind of like turn their backs on the situation. And seeing kind of how that, lack of support manifested in their careers, it did break my heart to see that up close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're blessed for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I've spoken to many athletes during this process of this podcast, and there's one in particular who I remember saying that she felt complete support from both of her parents, and the sacrifice that they made led her to feeling a pressure within her. Did you ever feel internal pressure because of everything your mom did for you, despite the unconditional love she still showed you?
I would say yes. The simple answer would be yes. I didn't necessarily feel it all the time. I think the later I got into my career, the more I felt it, just because, I felt as if every decision that I made, whether it was what team to play for or, where to play or how long to play or whatever, I just felt like, her approval meant a lot to me. And in some cases, I would put it before what I felt was best for me, myself, and so that kind of played a role, I think, towards the end of my career. I think just, knowing how much she sacrificed and knowing what she wanted for me and kind of delaying what I wanted a little bit just to, make sure that she was, stayed proud of me. I think that, played a role towards the end.
Mm. Wow. It's beautiful. Now, I know your mom very well, and I know your family very well on that side. And
Mm-hmm.
I know you come from a very driven family where your grandfather was extremely driven in life and passed that down to his children, including your mom, of course. Now, did you ever feel, or she ever try and push you to have that same drive that she experienced in her family?
It's interesting because, like, my siblings and I talk about this all the time. It's not necessarily that she, outright pushed us to have that same mentality. It was more so that it just rubbed off on us. I feel like nothing that I was ever taught was, hey, this is how you do things. And, it wasn't, necessarily spoken. It was more so like she just led by example, and, seeing the drive that she has to accomplish whatever it is she's working on, it really is just contagious. And seeing kind of how my aunts and uncles operate, it's contagious. It's one of those things that you pick it up. And, the older I get, my siblings, we joke about it all the time. It's like, wow, that's so something mom would say, or that's so something, Ubisiga would say, or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, because we were pretty close with all of our aunts and uncles growing up, and they all had kind of a hand in raising us, really. It just comes out naturally. It's just something that we had no choice. It's innate within us, I think, now. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily something she explicitly would pause, and point out or take a moment to necessarily teach us. It was more so like, I'm showing you that this is how it's done. And I know that you guys have it in you to kind of, do the right thing and be driven and have all these values. So I think it's just more so something we've picked up over the years.
Mm-hmm. She just led by example.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So you had a couple uncles who also played high level sports as well.
Oh yeah. It's weird because I was so young when they were, playing, and looking back now, I think as a kid, I didn't really understand the gravity of like how amazing they were. And like now that I talk about it in my adult years, I'm just like, yeah, it's crazy because I was young and didn't really understand, but they were amazing. You're best friends with Ubisiga, so I'm sure you know that he played Major League Soccer, and he was on the Olympic team, and did all this great stuff. And he would always just breeze by when I was a kid, stop into town for a second with his dreads. And he was just always like the cool, like traveling uncle. We're like, okay. But, but yeah, he was an amazing soccer player. And so was Moke, I think. And Abdul played as well. I think Ubusuku and Moke, were the only two to play in the MLS, but, yeah, they were some pretty awesome soccer players. And I think, I think because they were, amazing athletes and knew what it took, that definitely transferred into like my younger years when I was picking up the sport, of just like the mentality of how to be good. And I remember from a really young age, Abdullah taking me out in my backyard and being like, well, you're starting to play volleyball and you don't know how to serve over the net. This is what it's going to take for you to be able to serve over the net. And like, he had no idea what volleyball was, but he, had the general gist of it. And he was just, teaching me kind of a step-by-step of like, this is how you get good. He's like, you need to be out here. You need to be out here every day. This is what you got to do. He's like, you can make up makeshift nets over in the backyard. You can, you know what I mean? And it was just like teaching me things that I would never think to do on my own. And, by the end of those backyard sessions, I remember being significantly better. And, even when he wasn't around, that's when I was starting to do it on my own. And I'm like, those are kind of the, the baseline mental notes that he would teach me, and like how to be good at anything, awesome.
How cool. Sometimes uncles and aunts are better for that kind of stuff, because if your parents try and do that, you're like, Exactly. Now, you mentioned your older sister who also played volleyball, and that you wanted to emulate her. Now, a lot of families sometimes have a sibling rivalry that goes along with siblings sharing sports. Did you ever feel that with your sister?
No, I mean, and I think because of the age gap, that helped a lot. We weren't ever able to play on the same teams because she was too much older than me. And so, when I was heading into high school, she was going to college, and then, and then after that, obviously vice versa. She definitely pushed me to be better. I think just watching her play, I wanted to be on that level. I remember her making the top teams for club volleyball. And I remember her, going off to play Division I volleyball. And I'm like, I have to do that too. You know what I'm saying? I've got to be on that level. I have to chase that. So I think on my part, it might've been a little bit, of a competitive thing. I'm like, oh, like if she's doing it, I got to do it too. I can't be the one out here. You know what I mean? Like, doing anything less than, what she's doing. And I think after she got injured and she, ended her career, I think once I started to, pursue the whole pro aspect of the game, I think, she was more so just proud, and I know she knows, because I tell her all the time, like without her, I wouldn't have played. And so I think she's just proud of me at this point. And it was never really I wish I could have been as good as so-and-so or whatever. It was never really, it was just all love, which is pretty rare, because I've, played with twins. I've played with, sisters who are, much closer in age, and it can get pretty catty. Yeah. So I was super blessed to just have a mentor, really.
Awesome. That's great. More love in your life. That's amazing. So you did make it to college, but you haven't bragged about it yet. You played at a pretty good volleyball school. So what was your career like you went to Penn State, which is a national powerhouse in volleyball. So what was your experience like there?
I had a great experience at Penn State. I think, because it was such a powerhouse, I went into it and I was nervous as heck. I was super scared. And, you go through those moments of, like, should I even be here? And I think that, took its toll in my early seasons, freshman, sophomore year. I was, questioning, my spot and questioning, if I was good enough and yada, yada, yada. So I think that would be the only negative I would say that I had in my career, was just, and it was all me really, just on the mental aspect. And then once I kind of brushed that off, and stepped into my spot and, got comfortable in my role, that's when things like really took off for me. And I really enjoyed the experience. We won 2 national championships. I was an All-American twice. It was really an awesome experience. I can't say more about it. And by the end of it, I knew I wanted to play pro because I just couldn't let it stop there. You know what I mean? Coming off of my last year, you know, we fell short of the national championship, and I was like, this can't be my last, you know, experience playing high level competitive volleyball. I was like, I want to go out and win some more. So it definitely catapulted me to go overseas, and I'm so grateful to my coach. He was an interesting guy, and I know that he's got a reputation for being, you know, a little too hard on us, but I think it was really all for the best, and it's really shaped me to be who I am today. And whether that's, you know, playing or not playing, there's always, you know, those life lessons that you just take away with you, and I owe so much to Penn State, really.
Awesome. So I want to back up just a little bit. Before you went to Penn State, what was your recruiting career like? I guess if you call it that, or your recruiting journey like? And also, how did your parents help you through that process as well?
Oh man, it was intense. It was intense. New Jersey volleyball isn't the strongest. And so there was one girl ahead of me. She actually went to Penn State as well, so we were teammates, but she grew up in Jersey as well, and she was 1 year ahead. And so she was the face of New Jersey volleyball until she graduated and went on to Penn State 1 year before I was. So we kind of were very well known, and you know, we'd go to club tournaments and coaches would surround our courts, and it was just this big thing. And I think that was just a lot of pressure in itself. It's like I'm like, I want to be recruited, and I obviously want to play the best volleyball I can so that I can go to a good school. But not only was it, you know, about me, but it was more so like parents and my coaches being like, well, you know, you guys need to bring the coaches over to our court so that the other girls can get seen. And it was just, it turned into this whole big thing. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I just remember kind of, you know, again, my mom just coming in and being an absolute champion, an absolute GOAT, and just, you know, keeping me grounded, and B, just like reminding me that it's about, you know, you're still having fun, and you need to just play without the pressure of everybody else. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I remember my senior year, I actually got a foreign exchange student. Like, I earned a spot in the program because my high school did it with another high school in Scotland. And it was in the middle of the club season. I was already committed to Penn State, so I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was like, I definitely want to do this. And I remember I told my club coach ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to be missing this one tournament. I'm going, you know, to Scotland with my high school, and it's going to be this, you know, great experience. And he kind of brushed it off. And then when the time finally came for me to be starting to pack my bags, and, you know, the trip's coming around, and he completely berated me in front of the entire team, you know, this is unacceptable. Do you know how many, do you look around you, like, all these girls are counting on you. If you don't come, the coaches won't come, and they won't get seen, and it'll be your fault if they're not recruited. And it was just like this whole thing. And wow. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, man, no way you're doing this right now. And I remember my mom, of course, lost it. She's like, no way he did this in the middle of your club practice, you know? And it was, honestly, my recruiting process was a whole lot of that, just a lot of the extra unnecessary, you know, occurrences that I guess can happen when you have a high level player in a not so high level area. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I just remember it being a little bit hectic. And like I said, if I didn't have my mom, I don't know what I would have done. But I mean, I made it out, and I went on to play in college, and it was great after that. But I do really remember it being a very stressful, high pressure time in my life.
Yeah. I mean, the coach made it about all the other players, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow. So did you end up playing in that tournament, or did you end up going to Scotland?
No, I went to Scotland, man.
Okay. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah, I felt bad. It was terrible. I'm like, Mom, I need to give up my spot. What am I going to do? She's like, No, you're not going to give up your spot. They're going to be fine. I mean, you know what I mean? And I had to have a conversation with my teammates like, hey, this is your guys' time to shine. I'm not doing this so that, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to mess anything up for you guys. That's not at all my intention. But I mean, at the same time, you guys are more than capable, you know what I mean, of being successful at the tournament. And it was just one of those crossroads that, oh my gosh, to this day, just chills when I think about it.
Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm glad that you ended up going to Scotland. And I could imagine if you stayed and played in that tournament, you would have been playing with some resentment, and that's not good for anybody.
Right.
Wow. So you got to Penn State and you said that you're a little bit, I guess, hesitant and didn't know if you should be there. How did you handle that mental aspect when you were kind of going in a little bit timidly into your college career?
I mean, again, I was super blessed. I had some amazing teammates, and a lot of the girls and the upperclassmen were just like huge, my cheerleaders. They were just in my corner, just kind of like, look, you're here for a reason. He doesn't recruit just anybody. I mean, look at what we've accomplished, and it's because we have, we have amazing teams that come through this program. And like, you are a part of that. And like the moment that you embrace that, and the moment that you see what you're capable of, that's when things will start to click and you'll be fine. You know what I mean? It was a lot of my teammates coming in to help. It was a lot of, the coaching staff being amazing, and, of course, support from my family. So I think, again, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have the type of people in my life that I had.
Awesome. So you had a real good college career and decided after that last NCAA game that you lost that you had still more of a drive in you, and you went overseas. So where'd you go after Penn State?
So I graduated early. So I graduated in January after the volleyball season. And so because that's mid-season for overseas, there weren't very many opportunities over there because, teams were locked in and they were already heading into, middle of the season playoffs. And so I went to Puerto Rico because their season is shorter and it starts in January. So it actually was like a perfect transition into the pro life because it wasn't so far away and it wasn't super intense in terms of like, level of competition. So I think it was a great fit to go there. Like I went in January and then I was done in like May. So I played like a short season in Puerto Rico and I loved it. It was such a blast and it's such a beautiful island. And it was special to me also because I have Puerto Rican roots on my mom's side. And so I was able to link up with some family down there and they could see me play, people who haven't seen me since I was a baby. And I had, I had some strong ties there. So it was actually pretty perfect.
Cool. What is the main difference, like the level of play between, Big Ten, NCAA versus professional in Puerto Rico?
Yeah. I mean, the pro world makes fun of America and our college volleyball system because we have so many subs. And so you don't really need to be an all-around player to be successful at the college level. Whereas as soon as you transition to pro, and that's where a lot of the American players, I have a major setback going overseas, I think, because, me being I'm a tall player, so I'm offensively great. And then I had to transition into the defensive game because usually, in college I would sub out if, I didn't want to play defense or if they didn't want me serving or whatever. It was no problem. It was just like, use one of our subs. And then you go overseas and there's like 6 subs, literally less than half of the college game. And so you have to be an all-around player. You don't come out of the game. You serve, you play defense, you are, you're playing offense, you're setting up plays, you need ball control. There's a whole other aspect to the game that you need to, hone in on. And that's probably the biggest difference. So, and that's another reason why I'm grateful to go to Puerto Rico because it was, you're working with people who, it's like I said, not the intensity isn't as high and it's a low stress situation and people are willing to take their time to work with you on these skills and kind of coach you up a little bit. Whereas when you go to the big leagues across the pond, it's, a lot less patience because they're like, why don't you know how to do this already? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good segue into kind of the real life, volleyball that they're playing over in Europe.
Wow. So you became more of a complete player, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So from Puerto Rico, you went on to Europe, and where'd you play out there?
I went to Germany first, which I loved. I loved the country. I expected to hate it. I don't know why, but I was like, I don't know. I just didn't have a really good idea as to what German culture was. So I was like, I don't know if it's going to be a good fit. Like, yada yada yada. I was very in my head. I'll just put it that way. And I went out there, and it was an awesome experience. They loved their volleyball. They were so welcoming, and I had a really, diverse team. So I was working with girls from all over, which was really cool. Whereas when I was in Puerto Rico, it was just me. I actually had another Penn State teammate down there with me, and then everyone else was Puerto Rican. So going to Germany was a cool experience. It was a little bit of everything, and a lot of cultures coming together. So you just kind of are slowly learning like how it works in the European circuit, because that's how it is. All the teams are kind of meshed. You probably have somebody from Japan on your team, someone from Croatia, somebody who's, from Italy. It's just like a melting pot, which was really cool. And I loved it. After Germany, I went to China. China was culture shock, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah. What was that like?
Oh man. It was awesome and terrible at the same time. I don't know. It was definitely an experience. They are, culturally, they're about working hard all the time, no breaks, no off days. You know what I mean? You're there to play some volleyball, and then you head out. Whereas I feel like everywhere else, you kind of have, your days and your moments where you could take in the culture, take in the sights and stuff. It was like, nah, you're here to play. That's what we're paying you for. So that's what you'll do.
Wow.
But it also, it taught me so much. Like just because you're there doesn't mean that you have to, dive into every aspect of how they do things. You know what I mean? It's your body. It's, you got to do what's best for you, and you have to find your voice, which was really what China taught me. It was kind of how to speak up and how to, navigate, how to keep my body together, but at the same time, obviously, do what's asked of me. So it was an interesting experience, but a good one. And it was the number one place when I graduated college that I was like, I'll never play there. And I was so proud of myself for going, because it was definitely number one on the list of no. And so I was very proud that I went, and it was an awesome, great experience.
Cool. It's good that you pushed past that thought that you were going to have, and decided to go for it. It's amazing what can happen if you just surrender to whatever is happening in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
So after China, where'd you go?
After China, I played a little bit in Poland. And then it was okay. It was interesting. I think that, it was less of an awesome culture experience than everywhere else I played. I feel like, it just wasn't, as inviting, I would say. And I used a lot of my off time to travel around, and, it's just one of those countries that's not really welcoming to outsiders. And I found that the same thing in Croatia or Czech Republic. And yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, all right, well, probably not again, but cool to be here, Yeah. And then after that, I was in Italy, and Italy was awesome. By far my favorite place that I played.
Why?
It was just a great combination of amazing volleyball, and then, quality of life was great. The food is great. The people are nice. It's beautiful. It it was literally like, it was the perfect balance of everything. And then on top of it, it's like, I'm enjoying myself and I'm playing, you know, some of the best volleyball that there is to play in the world. So that was a very cool feeling.
Yeah, I bet. So during this time, you were developing your game, obviously, as a professional and becoming more of a complete player. I imagine the national team was knocking on your door.
Right. So I trained with the national team after Germany and then up until Italy. And that was, it was a great experience just because I went into it, you know, completely open-minded. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I'm going to give it, you know, my best shot and kind of just ride the wave, you know, take it as it comes. And I met some amazing girls, like, you know, people you play against in college that, you know, you hate playing them, but then once you get to know them, you're like, oh, these are awesome girls. You know what I mean? And it was great. And then, you know, going to international tournaments and being able to represent the country was super awesome. It wasn't even something that was on my radar, and it was just something, you know, God put in my lap, and it just ended up being a really awesome experience. And just something great to have on my resume. So like by the time I got to Italy, it was, you know, it was cool because I got there and I knew a lot of, you know, girls, and it was a lot of familiar faces. And so I had kind of a bigger family unit going into the season than I had ever had before. And that made for the quality of life to be, you know, that much better. So it was awesome.
Cool. Yeah. You're more immersed in the volleyball culture itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just learning from the best. It was, I mean, my game when I was in Italy was by far, you know, the best it had been. And it was just having been coming off of the training block with the national team. So it was, you know, taking what I learned, you know, with those in those summers to, you know, carry it over like that into my professional game. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. So I know the shelf life of a soccer player and kind of where they peak, you know, age-wise. I imagine for a volleyball player, it's probably a little bit higher than soccer player. It's about 27 and a half, I think, is exactly what it is. What's kind of the peak for a volleyball player?
Strangely enough, it's probably about the same. There are some outliers. I mean, I know a lot of really good players who are about 30, but I don't know anyone who really plays past 33. So like, and a lot of the Olympic players are like, our national team consists of about like the 27, 28-year-olds who are really good and, you know, just hitting their stride now. So, I mean, it might be a little bit older, but I would say it's around the same. So
you're not quite there yet then, or you're about to be there. Why did you hang up your volleyball shoes?
I think for me, it just got to be less fun, and it was more so of it was a job. And I think the mental aspect of it, it was just really lonely, and it was, you know, a lifestyle that I was definitely tired of. And I just feel like it was pulling me away from, you know, the people and things that I, you know, value. And that was starting to really be tough on the mental. And for me, you know, going through it, it was like, I'm doing what I love, and it's easy. It's fun. It's, you know, low stress. And then when it became, oh boy, I'm doing this. Oh boy. Like, you know, I'm dreading this. Oh boy. You know what I mean? And the drive to get better was not necessarily there. And I'm like, I'm stealing at this point. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And also I think, you know, playing pro was just a whole different mentality. It was you're playing with people who, they're going to get paid regardless of what they do, you know, and that it was tough. It was tough to work with people, you know, day in and day out. And you just don't know what you're going to get, each season, going into each season is what I mean. Mm-hmm. In terms of, you know, hard work and mentality and, you know, respect and all those things that you kind of want from the people around you, especially when you're around them as much as you are, you know, playing pro. It's just rough. And I was like, if I decide after, some months that I want to go in for the half season, I can, start to train and work with my agent and kind of figure that out. But I haven't really had that feeling, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have always had dreams of, doing the broadcasting and doing, analyzing for basketball or volleyball or whatever the case may be, and just kind of transferring into that. And with that comes, I need experience and I need to start making connections. And I'm at a disadvantage because it's not like I'm a, NFL player coming off of whatever career and like I can kind of just like get a job, you know what I mean, on a major network. So it's tough. I gotta start doing the legwork, and I think I was just ready mentally to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. We start playing a sport and we love the sport for the sport. And then it slowly, as we get older, starts to become about something outside the sport or something in addition to the sport. When you're young, you love it, but then it's like, I want to be on this team. And then from being on this team that's better and the best team, then all of a sudden it becomes about getting a college scholarship. And then from there, it can possibly go into playing professionally. Then it becomes about the money and the lifestyle, and it's always about something else. But it seems like from a lot of athletes that they tend to lose a little bit of the love because of something from outside of them. Would you find that accurate for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Going back to your uncle Ubasuku, who was a professional in the MLS, I always tried to get him to play indoor soccer with me, and he could not pull himself to do it. He said, I just can't mentally. I need to play at a high level or I can't play at all.
Mm.
Do you find that same for yourself? Like, have you tried playing volleyball just for fun at this point?
I do find that for myself as well, because since I've been in the States, I have a lot of friends who just play sand and like, uh, recreational kind of like low level stuff. And they're like always trying to get me to join tournaments and do, various things. And I'm just like, I'm not there right now. I'm not there mentally where I can just be like, yeah, like a nice little pickup game. Like it's just not something I can do right now. I don't know if that'll change, but I definitely do feel him when, it comes to the, pickup games and stuff. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and this doesn't go to say that he still doesn't love soccer, because we love talking about it and texting back and forth and watching it and meeting up in places to go watch it as well. So that
Right.
love for the sport is always there, but sometimes
Absolutely.
playing it can be a little bit different. Yeah. So you mentioned this earlier in the interview that some of your friends that you saw didn't have the same support from their family as you did. What are some things that you saw your friends or even people that you're playing against that you saw their parents doing that kind of hindered their development?
There's, I had one teammate in particular in college, and she just had a really tough dad. He was constantly, after the match, we'd win the match and she'd play well. And it was like the first thing out of his mouth was, criticism or just an undercut, something she, could have done better or whatever the case may be. And just seeing her face, you know what I mean? It just, and I think it transferred over into, practices and matches, because it turned into like anybody saying anything to her, whether it's a coach or a teammate, any sort of critique, it was like, it wasn't received well. And that wasn't, I don't think that's who she was in the beginning of the season. And then towards the end, as you know what I mean? Because you'd see how her dad would speak to her after matches. And then you would see kind of how the next day it was just a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And I think it just really destroyed kind of like her filter, I would say, of, like what's constructive and what's not. And it all just became, negative and not constructive. And so she just kind of like would flip like a switch, just like turn off and not receive anything. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that was tough, because then it turned into, well, I'm not listening to anyone. And nobody's trying to help me. And so I'm just on an island by myself.
Wow.
And yeah, it was hard to watch because we kind of knew what was going on, and, we would try and talk to her about it, but I don't think that she was comfortable opening up, to us. And so it was really hard to help her. And it was tough. Cause I understood, I think, to an extent of like what that was. And so, yeah, I think, ultimately you don't get better if you're not taking any criticism, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
if you're not
sure.
taking what anyone's saying, you're not going anywhere in your development. And so she kind of peaked and then kind of coasted and then ended up not playing after college. And that was tough to watch, because she definitely, I think, in my opinion, could have been really great.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing, first of all, that parents, we think we're doing our best all the time, when we are really doing our best all the time. Even as non-parents, nobody's out there saying, I'm going to do the worst job I can possibly do right now.
Right.
And so we think we're motivating our children and we think this is going to be good for our children, but really we don't realize we're coming from a place of frustration, of ego, and really of fear that our child's not going to be good enough. Now, I imagine this teammate of yours, I can, without knowing anything about the story, I imagine that dad didn't just start this in college. That probably
Right.
This happened as a youth, but then it seemed like she just snapped all of a sudden and said, I'm done with this kind of behavior. Or maybe the coach reminded her of her dad a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I wish I could have, gotten her to kind of open up a little bit just to kind of understand which one it was. But I would imagine it was one of the two things. Just, watching her body language and kind of how she received everything. That's exactly what it looked like.
Wow. Yeah, that's the thing we don't realize, is that sometimes when we're trying to do what we think is best for our child, that doesn't seem to have an effect while they're a youth, but then all of a sudden, really what it is kind of emotional neglect, childhood and emotional neglect. And that catches up to people later on in life. So hopefully she's dealing with it. Hopefully her dad has kind of dealt with it. And I guess all we can do is just send love and energy out their way.
Right.
So if you could say a couple things to parents who are raising athletes, whether they're volleyball players or playing in other sports, what would they be?
I would say, take the kids' lead. I think first and foremost is just take their lead and be patient with, what it is that they're trying to do, and kind of wait to see what exactly it is, whether it's they want to dive in or whether it's something they just want to try, you know what I mean? And that will, I think, put you on a better path, as opposed to kind of latching on to whatever activity it is and then kind of projecting what you want onto the situation. Because I think, I see it a lot, and even in my sport, I've talked to girls who they've gotten all the way to like this super high collegiate level or even the pro level, and they're like, I don't even want to do this. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, you've spent all these years doing this. And it's kind of like, yeah, I just at this point didn't want to disappoint my parents, or, I just at this point, I hate it, but I'm scared to tell them, or whatever the case may be. And I'm just like, don't let it get to that point. You know what I'm saying? And I know it's a hard thing to do. I could imagine, I'm not a parent myself, but I know that there are extreme challenges, especially when it comes to activities and sports. But just take their lead. And then I think that will lead you to where it is, your kid feels comfortable, and where it is you can, step in and kind of guide and help. It shouldn't be the other way around. And I think that's just my 2 cents, just from what I've seen.
Yeah.
It really can't be the other way around. That just leads to destruction.
Yeah, it's
in some way.
Very wise words. It's their journey. Ultimately, we're just alongside of them instead of dragging them on our journey.
Right.
Yeah. Well, beautiful. Awesome. Aiyana, I really appreciate your time today, and just everything that you said is just amazing, and the support and the love that you had, and just your journey as an athlete. Again, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing everything.
No problem. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for reaching out for my 2 cents.
Yeah, of course. I hope to see you someday on TV on a sideline reporter or doing behind the desk or whatever you do. Best wishes to you.
That's the goal. Thank you so much.
So what were your biggest takeaways? I have a couple, one related to Aiyana and one related to her teammates she spoke about near the end of the interview. Now here's yet another athlete that learned about work ethic from the role models around her. She had 2 uncles who were professional soccer players, which not everybody has the same access to, but most of us have access to at least one parent, and some have 2 in their lives, whether they're living in the same household or in separate ones like Aiyana did. Aiyana said she consciously and maybe even unconsciously followed the drive that her mother showed in life by providing for her and her siblings, like getting her to tournaments, paying fees, essentially doing whatever it took to put Aiyana in the best environment for her to succeed at the sport that she loved. She essentially led by example. Now, I'm sure there were bumps in the road in their relationship, but that unwavering support of her journey is what Aiyana seems to have taken most out of her experience from her mom. Even feeling as if she didn't have her father's full blessing while she played volleyball before college, the support she felt from her mom and the role model she had in her older sister helped propel her to a high level of success on the court. One question we'll never know the answer to is how things might have turned out for her if she lived most of her time with her dad instead of her mom. Would her dad have accepted the fact that she wanted to lead the athletic part of her journey through volleyball rather than basketball sooner than he did? Our children can often help us to wake up to the fact that we're operating out of ego and from a fear of not having control, a fear of not having acceptance, or a fear of not having security in our lives or our children's lives. Once we're conscious of how we're operating, we have the choice to continue down that path or turn to a new one and follow where we know the universe will best provide for our children. I'm sure you can imagine which one is more beneficial for our child and for ourselves as well. Aiyana was blessed with athleticism and physical ability, work ethic that she learned from her family, but also with a family that placed her in the best environment for her to flourish. Of course, I imagine her success might have been different if she didn't love the game. And that's always the deciding factor with all these athletes. They have to love their sport in order to want to work on it and improve. And of course, it's our job to basically not make them stop loving it by operating from our own ego, which can be solely ours, or it can be learned from our own parents or their parents or their parents or their parents. This leads me to what Aiyana said about one of her teammates who received quite a bit of criticism from her father, which led her teammate to not being able to receive any feedback from the coaches or her teammates. The dad would immediately criticize his daughter even after she played well. And as I mentioned in the interview, I imagine that kind of communication went on for much of this young woman's life. Now, of course, dad was trying to help his daughter, right, to toughen her up and never be satisfied with how she was playing so she would keep striving to be better. It was probably a similar narrative that he received as a child, or one that he wishes he had received as a child. Overall, this desire to help his daughter really came from a place of fear. A fear that his daughter wasn't good enough, and possibly that he wasn't good enough as a father. So this fear led her to essentially believe that she wasn't good enough, and that's exactly the deep-rooted fear of the ego itself. Nobody wants to believe they're not good enough, but many of us have that fear. That fear can lead us to operating from that place of ego. We start looking for eluding that fear from somewhere outside of us in alcohol, food, accomplishments, validation on social media, or we can shut down whenever we face feedback. As Aiyana said, ultimately you don't get better if you're not taking criticism. Players who can't take criticism don't flourish, and they don't reach their quote-unquote potential. They need to be able to take criticism from their coaches, teachers, bosses. If they're more often than not feeling overly criticized at home and not good enough at what they do, they will not be able to receive feedback as openly as they need to in order to live freely and love what they're doing. Remember, it's a parent's job to love and support. Yes, we need to let our children know what's okay and what's not okay in life, but there's always a time and a tone that are appropriate in order to get our message across to them so they will listen. And you can always get any message across with love from your heart. If you want to know more about how to do that more often and to release unhelpful ways of communicating to others and to yourself, feel free to contact me through my website at clearmind.com. I hope this was helpful and that you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening. Much love to you and many blessings.